Hi, folks. If we could ask you to take your seats, please take your seats. Hi, good afternoon, folks. There we go. If I could ask you folks to just silence your cell phones, make sure that they're in vibrate mode or off, please. Thank you. My name is Brian Kestenblatt, and it's my honor to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for the celebration of life of Scott Richard Sells. I'll also be sharing a few memories of how I knew Scott. I had the privilege and the pleasure of both working alongside and being friends with Scott for many years. I'd been working here at Oak Hill for about 10 years before Scott transferred from Hawaii in 2005 as the GM. When he arrived, he created a stability at the location that had been missing. He had created an energy that was needed. He established an environment here where people looked forward to coming to work. He taught us to be competitive and to be winners. He would say, if we're going to be on a list, we better be on top. Things turned around at Oak Hill, and then he became a market director of the Bay Area, and the market started thriving. Scott had many sayings. Some may not be appropriate for this service today. But one that you probably all have heard him say was loyalty, honor, and camaraderie. And Scott lived by those words. He taught me the importance of taking care of the staff. He'd often say, if the staff was happy, the families were going to be happy too. He taught me about sales, cemetery development, reading financials, the importance of supporting our veterans, and many other aspects of the profession. I'll never forget him taking me out to new developments and making me count hundreds and hundreds of lot pins in the San Jose heat. On days we had events, we'd drive around the cemetery together. We'd make sure the counselors were canvassing the parks and, as he would always put it, touching the lives of families. Scott loved Hawaiian culture. I'll never forget the times he would press his forehead firmly against mine, and he'd say, "Oh, can you feel it? Feel the mana." Mana is a sacred Hawaiian term known as spiritual energy of power and strength. And most importantly, he taught me how to eat sushi. And let me tell you, he was an expert when it came to fish. Scott was a huge fan of John Wayne's. He had photos of him hanging in his office, and he'd always rattle off one-liners from John Wayne. The following was one of his quotes. He was loyal to himself, his close friends, his work and ideas. He worked hard and played hard. Scott had a deep sense of family. He always brought that to the people in his life. His father, Rich, was very influential on Scott during his life, both personally and professionally. As Scott grew up and became a friend to Rich, in addition to being his son, I would now like to invite Rich, Scott's father, to say a few words.
Good afternoon. Scott was born when Nancy and I were in the Army, and we called him Mr. G.I. Joe Buddy. And he'd wear that when he was small, had the little Army hat on him, played with toy soldiers, guns, and after Shannon was born, they became close buddies and have been until now. He was a Boy Scout and explorer. He got to Life Scout, and then, like his dad, discovered girls, cars, and there was no Eagle Scout in the offing. His love of the island started after we bought our first condo in Kauai in 1975. By the way, this Aloha shirt, I've got about five $300 shirts at home. This came from Google to the Gilroy Hotel. $10, thank you. The introduction in the business came when he went over to Bunkers Edenvale in Las Vegas. It was a summer job after his junior year. He worked on the grounds and reported to an old cowboy who was the maintenance superintendent. John Stoddard, who was my friend and GM at the time, mentored him. They would go to dinner together and John would talk about the business. And Scott lived on the third floor of the apartment at the funeral home. With no family in California, two guys I started with, Arthur Anderson, became uncles, Uncle Ben Sumner and Uncle Charlie Schwan. Now, Uncle Charlie is the biggest asshole in the world. And as his daughter told me just a few minutes ago, now Charlie can be number 2. Our kids grew up together, and they're all here today, both the Sumner family and the Schwan family. My brother's son and wife, Brad and Torianne Sells, are here from Connecticut, as well as cousins Roger Dahl from Iowa, Steve Wilkinson from Arizona. And our grandson Dylan Opria took a break from Northern Arizona University and is here also. After 2 years of junior college, Scott came to Nancy and said, "Help me get ready for the Marine Corps." Nancy said, "Okay, you eat what I serve, no raiding the icebox, you'll swim and run with me and work out with me." And he was in great shape when he went into the Marine Corps. At boot camp, his graduation, he was the honor man of the platoon. The Marines gave him dress blues, and he took the guide on the last parade. Drill instructors, a sergeant and a sergeant first class, came to our after party. They drank, cleaned up afterwards, slept on the floor, and that was unheard of for drill instructors to honor somebody like that who was just in a recruit platoon. After active duty and in the reserves, he wanted to get in the business. So Chuck Merrick and Bob Motzkin assigned internship with Darrell Bowden at Eden Cemetery in Los Angeles. Then the GM job opened up in Bakersfield, and under more training by sales icon Jay Musselman, he learned a little bit more about the business and about sales. Then on to Denver at Crown Hill, more sales education under another star, Doug Miller. And while in Denver, Shannon brought her new beau, Craig Opria. And as the guys were outside having drinks, and it was December, so it was a little cold, but anyway, so Scott came up to Craig, draped his big arm around his shoulders, and he said, "Now we have a family tradition for the new guy. And you'll have to catch me at drinks to tell you what that means. There's plenty of new guys here. So then the job of his dreams came true in Hawaii, the GM in Hawaii. And his love of Kauai prompted us to buy another condo with great cooling winds, which he needed. And so now both Shannon and Scott had places for when I'm gone. Nancy's gone. I'm going to go first. No, I'm going second. So there, with his lieutenants, John Childress and Mike Perwitka, they made some great numbers. Many strategies were discussed at Murphy's Bar in Honolulu with his lieutenants. Now, there's a story about Murphy's Bar with our friend Gary Hansen, who was running a big insurance operation in Honolulu. He and Scott went to Murphy's. Sitting at the bar, and Scott had to go to the bathroom, so the seat was empty. A guy came up. Gary said, that seat's taken. And the guy said, what do you mean it's taken? There's nobody here. And he said, hey, I'm going to sit down. And looming behind him is the giant of a man. And my friend Gary said, why don't you tell that to him? Oh, okay, I'm gone. His life changed then when he met Lena. Married on a beach in front of our place in Kauai, and Childers was the best man. We met Lena, beautiful, smart, driven, and a wonderful wife. At our house in San Diego, she discovered the bottomless wine glass. With the birth of daughter Isabella, a move was important to the mainland for good schools. Isabella, beautiful, talented, athlete, and Mensa. Now, her brains had to come from her Korean grandparents who flew in from Seoul 2 days ago, and they're sitting right over here. Those brains didn't come from us. Came from them. After 10 successful years in Hawaii, he had many relationships with the local cops, the police board, veterans, first responders, etc. Those friendships have continued, and he would go over there frequently to party, reminisce, and have great fun. Opportunity in San Jose came up, and then he could move and ensure that Isabella was going to get some great schooling. Here he became active in civic organizations, veterans, first responders, and whatever. The great support team at Oak Hill and on the Bay Area operation were instrumental in his success. Also, his great and wonderful assistant and organizer, Lisa, made a big change for him, or big support for him. He met and mentored Andy Lopez, who's been a close confidant and friend. His industry involvement, he was president of Colorado, the Hawaii Association, active in Bay Area Association, and president of our international association of over 8,000 members. He also was a member of the Toppers, which was organized in the 60s. 25 of the top sales leaders and sales-oriented operation guides were members of this, and one blackball, if you nominated, you could not be in it anymore. And we meet every year, and this year we're going to meet at Quinn Egan's place down in Mississippi. A tradition is to send black orchids to the funeral of a member who died. And this over here is that beautiful black orchid. Pretty, huh? But it's traditional. And many of those toppers are here today. John Wayne and his outlook on life became a guideline for Scott's leadership. His belief in loyalty, honor, commitment to the troops, integrity came from there, and of course, me and Mom. Me more. His greatest attributes were leadership, knowledge of the industry, commitment to excellence. His hearty laugh has been mentioned by all wishers who I've talked to or received good wishes from around the country, as well as his huge presence. I received a call from Bob Waltrip, our founder of the company, who stated how valuable Scott was in the success of SCI over the years and his profound friendship and admiration for Scott. And he said it's a great loss for SCI. We learned of Scott's death while in Wichita, while in a baggage claim, waiting to get our baggage, and trying to get out of there quickly while we're bawling and crying and standing at the Southwest. No way. Take a flight tomorrow. And like our good friends Jay and Joe Rosenthal trying to get here from Boise, Idaho, they drove down. I want to say thanks to our many friends from around the country who have come here driving, flying, however you got here, to express their love to us, and we really appreciate that. And thanks to the staff at Oak Hill and the Bay Area teammates, and all the support of the SCI executives and staff, and especially Jay Waring. I'll close with Scott's call to action. Let's get ready to rumble!
Thank you, Rich. Scott was a bit boisterous, just like his laugh. And he also had an amazing singing voice. If you hadn't heard him sing, he was really, really smooth voice. We're now going to play one of his favorite songs, White Sandy Beach. You could often hear him singing as he's driving in his truck. One can know a man from his laugh, and if you like a man's laugh before you know anything about him, you may confidently say he's a good man. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Scott's loyalty to his friends formed bonds that are unbreakable and unmatched. When he decided to take you under his wing, and mentor you, you are certain to find success. Our next speakers are friends and a few of those he loved very much. Andy Lopez will be giving the eulogy. They always had each other's six. After he speaks, both Mike Pokrivka and Raymer Pry will in turn talk about their long-standing relationships with Scott.
Well, Rich took my opening line. I was going to say that one. But it's hot, and I know there's folks in Hawaii that are live streaming right now. So I want to say hello to them and let them know, like Scotty would say, "Oh, it's hot. Madame Pele's here. Fire!" My name is Andy Lopez, and I had the honor of working with Scott and knowing him for about 20 years. And I worked here in the Bay Area for about 7 years as a sales director. When I had the opportunity to come to this market, it allowed me to work alongside a living legend in the funeral profession. But as time passed, I learned more in those years about leadership, financials, sales, team building, napkin challenges, professionalism, drinking, being a pirate. If you knew Scotty, he was a pirate. Setting expectations, and life lessons that most people spend a lifetime hoping they learn. Many of you know the fun-loving, loud-laughing, disruptive contrarian. You know who I'm talking about, Jay. He could argue in a meeting. Sushi-loving, sake-drinking, lovable teddy bear, and dedicated SCI employee that he was. It's almost ironic that we had a conversation about what he wanted me to say about him standing here about 3 weeks ago. That was the last time we discussed it, and we've had many conversations. This one was very pointed, and I changed the subject, and we talked some more, and we said we were going to talk at our toppers meeting. I wish I would have asked him more questions because this is the toughest thing I've ever had to speak about, and his extensive vocabulary would have come in handy. I would have had some really cool words because I can tell you he often would say something to me, and I'd have to go look it up because I didn't know what the hell that meant. I'm here today to speak about some of the different sides of Scott Sells. Scott was the life of the party. As many of you know, he really did ask me to say some specific things, and some of them are not appropriate. But if it offends you, as Scotty would say, get over it. When people think of Scott, this was the side that most people remember, that the life of the party. But his words to describe himself the last time we talked, and I apologize, but I don't. He said, he was the biggest ball of fuck me you ever met. And that was Scott. When I say the life of the party, I need to elaborate because Scott was a lot more than just partying. I've traveled all across the U.S. with Scott, and no matter where we would be, people would come and sit. They would sit with him. We used to call it holding court. They would talk with him and drink with him. It wasn't because he was the one doing all the partying. It was because everywhere we went, people gravitated to him and wanted to be around him. You see, one of the things that was very special about Scott was his uncanny ability to walk in a room and command the attention of everyone in it with just his laugh. And one of the things that he used to do, and us in the Bay Area, we love to hear him do it, and I'm not going to honor it the right way, but I told him I would do it. And it was his Tarzan yell. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Oh! He's laughing at me, telling me to lick it. Here's where the power of his magnetism really made an impact. In this audience today, there are people that's careers have grown because of him. They've grown their businesses because of him. They have met their spouses because of him. All because Scott introduced one person to another that otherwise probably would have never met. Lives changed. That was the party. And if we're going to honor his memory, we can't let the party end here. We need to continue his legacy and what he did for others by continuing to do what he used to do for us very well. We may not be as good at it as he was, but by God, we'll find a way. He will light up in a room. Remember the first time I went to Cana with him, and he was walking in, and he saw BBJ, and the world stopped. And those two are so damn loud when they're at a bar together. That's all you heard. Those two big guys hug. It was like the Titanic crashing against the icebergs. That's why he said, "Oh, big guys." Scott was a leader. Scott was not just a guy who knew his stuff. It went beyond that. He was a determined coach that was so focused and wanted to win championships so bad that he demanded the very best from his team at every stage of the game. Scott loved the book, The Art of War. One of the ways we connected was with some of the things that we like to read together. And there's a great quote in there that really embodies how he led. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war. Anyone who ever worked with Scott in this room, I'm sure you heard him say, "Go away, you're not ready. You're not ready." I heard that a lot. Hector, you heard it a lot. I think all of us heard it say, "You're not ready," once or twice with some of us. He meticulously coached you, trained you, developed you, so you would be prepared for whatever came your way. Scott didn't just go find winners and taught them how to lead. He developed leaders and taught them how to win. That was the Scott I knew. Some of his methods may have been confusing and frustrating and absolutely maddening at times. Go ahead and nod your heads. If you worked with him long enough, you would want to run your head through a wall because you couldn't understand. Heck, at one point I haven't felt so victimized. I was here for about a year. And he said to me to go figure it out. And I was in my office. We were building a PPA team. We had no one. But he was crazy. He had me hire sales managers, then hire a recruiter, hire a trainer, and I had one sales guy. And I'm trying to figure all this out. And he would just kind of tell me, "Well, talk to this person, you'll figure it out. Talk to that person, you'll figure it out." And the longer I was here, the less I was welcome to just walk in his office. And one day I just had it. And I stormed into his office. At least I wasn't there. Otherwise, I would have been stopped. So I walked in the office. It's true. And he looks at me and I said, I'm done with this. I'm really pissed off at you. And he looked at me and he goes, "What?" And he starts smiling. I said, "I'm really angry." He said, "Why?" I said, "You haven't taught me anything, and I've been here a whole year." He starts laughing and he says, "Close the door." And I went, uh-oh. I thought I was going to be dead. Then he started asking me questions about how we did business as SCI. You see, I knew the funeral profession. I knew how to manage a cemetery. I knew caskets. I knew the business. But he was teaching me the way SCI did business so I can better serve the families. And by the end of the day, he asked me, "Who do you call when you need this?" Usually the answer was Jane Benson. He says, "Okay. Did you always get your answer?" "Yes." "Oh, what about training? You need something?" "Oh, Sharon Mervish." "Okay." He says, "Have you gotten everything you need?" "Yes." We went to lunch that day, and by the time we got back, I had what he called a war plan. And many of us here that worked in the market, we would do our war maps. And we had a war map on how to get to where we're going to go. And that was the month that we had our biggest breakthrough in this market with a PPA sales team. Scott taught me that I could learn from him without him saying a word. It was almost like learning through osmosis. I was talking to Prince Henry the other day about how much stuff we've learned from Scott without us knowing that we were learning it. He was the master of strategy, politically and mentally. Gerald Patton summarized Scott with one quote: "Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their results." Many people in this room, I'm sure, catch themselves saying, "I sound like Scott." the hardest part is going to be me not being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I just left the meeting and I was just wearing out Frankie because he wasn't hitting his numbers and I sounded like you. And Frank's laughing back there because he knows often. He's like, you sound like Scott. It's like, well, shut up. He was my confidant. He was my resource for logic. He was my shrink. Didn't always work out so well for that part. And he was my protector. You can question a man's character all day long, but you can't question a man's loyalty. Loyalty, camaraderie, and honor. That was the three things that were required if you were going to be part of his downline. It was very important to him. With Scott, you could always be honest because like a true brother, he would coach you through your failures, and he was there for you when you cried. He would pick you up when you fell. And why, guys? His love is here for you. He's a brother to many of you because his loyalty went beyond work. He took the time to invest in people because he cared about them. And by the way, we ordered a flyover for him today. I am better today than when I first met Scott because he trusted me to guide me and teach me the right way. That brotherhood he instilled in us, that blind trust he placed in him, has given us a huge responsibility. And that responsibility is to look after his family now. Lena and Bella know that they have more uncles now than most families have siblings. And that blind trust is epitomized on the one day he didn't fit in a car we rented, so he sat in the back seat, and we had a couple of people in the car. He's in the back seat. I don't know what we were doing before that, but we're driving down the highway, and he proceeded to put his hands on my eyes while I'm driving, and he goes, oh, lead and drive with your spirit. I swear I thought we were going to die. But he let me go. I made him a promise that I would be up here speaking about him today, and that I would take care of his wife and daughter if he wasn't around to protect them anymore. Why did he talk to us so much about this? Because I found out he had the same conversation with many of us. Bella was her accomplishments. To him, he always talked about how much she reminded him of himself. She was him. He always said that. He was so proud to tell us about his wife and how intelligent she is and her decorating skills, and by God, the way she played the piano. He was our friend, and we'll be there to protect you both. Talk to yourself. He would say that. And what would we reply? Strong. You know you want it. That was Scotty. His greatest gift was his ability to connect with people and become friends. I received hundreds of messages from social media, people who couldn't be here, people I know that knew Scotty. Scott had a way of making every single person feel like he was their friend. It didn't matter how many times he had met them or how much time he had spent with them. He had a gift for connecting with people and being memorable. His friendship was so powerful that you would find yourself doing crazy things because that's how much you cared about him. I drove to Pahrump once with him, and one day we got in the truck, drove to Pahrump, that's past Texas, and back here. I picked him up at midnight, and all we talked about was this trip is going to give us a memory. It was a rainstorm, and we were driving over the pass, and the wind picked up, and I hit a big old tumbleweed that was bigger than my truck, and we hit this thing, and we both got quiet. And he looked at me, and we started laughing, and he goes, "There's the memory! Ha, 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 ha!" And we talked about that big tumbleweed forever. He was the one friend I could communicate with non-verbally because our bond and the time we spent together was unmatched by any other friendship I've ever had. I knew when I had to keep quiet because if I didn't, he would look at me, and here goes another line he wanted me to say. You just need to drink a big old tub of shut the fuck up. In closing, it wasn't that everyone knew of Scott and he was hard to miss. It was the fact that everyone here felt like they knew him and they knew him personally. It is a powerful gift to be able to make people feel so connected to you and be so memorable to many. And I know there are thousands more that aren't able to be here right now and that are sharing and thinking about this great loss. I wasn't ready for this day. This isn't just a personal loss for many of us. This is a loss that changes us and will change the world of the funeral profession as we know it. His impact was truly that big. Scott lived his life the way he wanted, and he wouldn't have been happy living it any other way. He was someone I admire dearly, and I will miss every day for the rest of my life. And I'll leave you with this. A quote from John Wayne, one of Scott's favorite idols. I have tried to live my life so that my family will love me and my friends respect me. The others can do whatever the hell they please. I'll miss you. Semper Fi, brother.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Pokrivka. I was a 26-year-old kid, just moved from the Jersey Shore to Honolulu, and I was walking through the halls of Borthwick Mortuary one morning when from around the corner appeared a 39-year-old Scott Sells, the area vice president at the time. He looks at me and he says, "Meet me back here at 4 o'clock. We're going out." And I did. And we did. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, that was the start of our 18-year friendship. Like all good relationships, we invested a lot of time. We spent half days with each other. That is from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. Starting the evening off at Murphy's with pints of beer and shuffleboard, then off to karaoke, ending the shift with sake and spicy tuna hand rolls. It soon became clear to me that Scott was no ordinary person. The people that reported to Scott and those he influenced were not only highly loyal, but cared very deeply for him. And Scott cared very deeply for his people. Scott had the back of each and every one of his friends. I remember very clearly one night when Scott and I were out. He told me, "As long as you're with me, you will never get hurt." And I remember thinking, I wonder why he didn't say we'd never get in trouble. But I will settle for not getting hurt. I wouldn't be here today where I am if it wasn't for Scott. Early in 2004, while still in Hawaii, I wanted to get out of the business and move on to other things in the mainland. I told Scott I was leaving the business and going to sell pharmaceuticals in St. Louis or something. He looked at me and said, "No, you're not. You have too much talent to leave the business. Don't do anything. Let me call Dad and I'll get you a spot in California." Well, over 15 years later, here I am. Still with SCI. Because of that, married to my beautiful wife, Myrna, and my 2 wonderful kids. If Scott simply said, "Well, we'll miss you. Let me know if there's anything I can do," I wouldn't be here. That was not his style. I was one of his guys, and Scott protected his guys. Scott lived by a simple code. We were discussing John Wayne movies one day, and he told me the reason he enjoyed them so much is because they all have a common message: camaraderie, honor, loyalty. These things were very important to Scott, and anybody that met him soon found that out. He was our John Wayne. Scott was one of the rare people who had the ability to hold a tight circle of friends while at the same time making fast friends wherever he went. Scott and I were at a bar in Paris, France, when he started the conversation with 2 local patrons by telling them, "We had to save your ass in 2 world wars." And I remember thinking, oh, shit, here we go. And then he came back and said, but we would not have even had the chance if it wasn't for you saving us in the American Revolution. And then a big smile came across his face. He raised his glass, and boom, what do you know it? New French friends. Not only did Scott have the ability to make new friends, but the ability to connect people in his circle to each other. If Scott introduced me to one of the good guys, I knew that he was in the same circle I was. We were part of the same fraternity of good guys. Scott's laugh. Tell me there is not one of you here who has not at one point in your life done an impression of Scott's laugh. We all know it. We all love it. My daughter Allie was born prematurely in 2010. When she was 1 week old, Scott came to visit her for the first time. Now, Allie was in the NICU. I don't know how many of you have ever been in a NICU, but it's darkly lit, quiet, sterile, the proverbial china shop. Well, I took Allie out, and she was resting on my chest, all 2.5 pounds of her. Scott was sitting across from me, and we're talking, and then here it comes. Scott's laugh, shooting through the serenity like a thunderclap. My daughter's first conscious act of her life was to reach up and cover her ears because Uncle Scott was laughing. When Scott met Lena, it was like a rainbow entered Scott's spirit. He was happy and quickly in love. And immediately Lena was part of the gang. She was the perfect addition. She didn't take any of Scott's shit, and we did not dare to give her any. I remember the afternoon she met us at Murphy's sporting a beautiful engagement ring, and I remember thinking, way to go, Scotty. Anybody that knew Scott knew he was extremely proud of Bella. We all heard about her academic accomplishments, her water polo, and most importantly, that she was his mini-me. A while back, Scott and I were driving down the road one day. Scott called home through the Bluetooth speakers in my car. Bella came on and started talking. She was probably 3 years old at the time, and I was amazed at how well she spoke. And I know Scott kept you talking just to show you off. Okay? Scott has given a lot of contributions to this world. And his greatest of all is Isabella Sells. What we have lost. Scott the friend. Somebody who would do anything for you. We have lost the often inappropriate Tarzan yell. The let's get ready to rumble yell. We will probably never drive with anybody through the cemetery going 65 miles an hour. Breaking into spontaneous pirate talks for hours on end. And now when we have meetings in hotels or conference centers, we're going to have to read the signs directing us where to go instead of just simply listening for Scott. I have small comfort in knowing the last words we said to each other were, I love you, as this is how we ended each conversation that we had. Scott is gone, but what he has taught me stays. Take pride and influence and develop those around you. If your friend needs help, help them. If you're going to hug somebody, mean it. If you love somebody, tell them that you love them. My heart is broken. I have never felt this way before Sunday. Scott was very special, and I will miss him greatly. Thank you.
I'd like to now ask Raymer Pry to come up and say a few words.
Hello, folks. Brian, one thing I want to talk about before I begin was you were mentioning the San Jose Heat. Come to Vegas sometime, buddy. Just thought I'd mention that. Lena and family, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to share some thoughts today. I am so honored. Something that Mike kind of alluded to a little bit was Sunday. And there's like a myth, I think, about our profession. Something about the people within our profession, we see death every day. And you know what? It doesn't matter to us. Let me tell you, a phone call came in on Sunday while I was in Durango, Colorado. Bob Dowson shared the news with me, and it was a kick in the gut. It was something I'm still not over. The shock of it, how it was just fast and swift, and it's there. The death profession, if you don't have those feelings, I did it for 46 years, you shouldn't stay in it. You need to know about it. This teaches us something. It's a tough lesson. Don't want to go through this too often, but it's all very true. After the phone call, I went back in. God, this is starting to sound like a theme. I went back into the bar I was at. And my brother, Glenn Abercrombie, and by the way, you're going to hear that term a lot. And Rich, I think that's part of the culture in which you brought. We were all brothers. We all cared for each other. There's a camaraderie. And we all hug a lot today. Tomorrow we'll hug a lot too. It's what we do. It's how we share our love for each other and for us in the profession. This was my brother. And you know that, and I know that. When I shared the news with Glenn, and there were 6 others there that day, they all knew Scott. We cried. Here's another shocker. We then toasted him. Actually, it was multiple times. But the feeling of love was real. And that you all know about. When we've lost somebody that's close, when we love somebody it's difficult. We know the family, we know the great people. And all of a sudden, they're going through a terrible pain. Scott was a patriot, a Marine veteran. He was so proud of that. He was a death care professional. He was a leader. He was involved in not only his profession, but his community and with his family. He had a number of passions. Some have already been discussed. And I'll go on to a few more. Music. With our company, our great company, we're able to win trips and go places. Well, there was one night, it was long after dark, and I'm out walking the beach in Cabo, and I hear music playing. I go over, and it's Scott, and he's got 2 bottles of tequila. And boy, is that ever an invitation. So anyway, and BBJ can attest to this, I'm no IT guy. I mean, it took me a long while to understand a lot of stuff. Well, he had a thing called an iPod, and it was just brand new at that point in time. And I'm like, wow, Scott, talk to me about this. Meanwhile, I'll have a shot. And then, so he told me, he goes, name any song you want. I've got it. For the next couple hours, we sat around, and I kept firing songs out at him, and some of them were pretty obscure, too. I want you to know that. Damn, if he didn't have them on that iPod. By the way, I now have 3 of them. Of course, this was like 15 years later. I'm a little late in the party, but it's okay. I'm good with that. He not only liked the music, listening to it, he loved to play and sing it as well. Another couple years later, we're in Cancun. We both won trips a lot. It was good. We're in Cancun, and we're staying at the Fairmont. Mike's giving me a nod yes. And by the way, Jay, the company's done much better on this now, because what we do is go to all-inclusive resorts. So you can drink and eat all you want. You don't worry about bar bills. The Fairmont, awesome in Cancun. But, God, you had to pay for everything. So Brother Glenn and I and a few others, we went and picked up 6 cases of beer at the Walmart. Yes, the Walmart in Mexico has liquor. We had a bunch of bottled liquor. We had wine and everything, and we found an obscure corner somewhere within this resort. And all of a sudden, we were popular. Not that Glenn and I are anything special, but those guys got liquor over there, and we don't have to pay for it. Let's go. So anyway, you know, what do you do next? Mike and Scott played their ukuleles. They brought it out, and it was beautiful. We were absolutely mesmerized. And the thing about Scott, when he played his ukulele and he sang, you could feel his passion for the culture of Hawaii. You could just feel it. He loved it, and he enjoyed it. And you know what, Mike? The rest of us enjoyed it too. It was a wonderful evening, and certainly was something very, very special. Okay, so I'm like speaker 4 or 5, but I still got to talk about the laugh. I know you all heard about that. One thing that came up on Sunday was that when you heard that laugh, you wouldn't turn to someone and say, boy, he's got a laugh just like Scott's. No, his laugh was extremely unique and distinctive, and it was his. There was no doubt about it. And, you know, you can talk about doing an impersonation of it and whatever, you will fail. It just isn't the same. Through this week, I've gotten a lot of messages. You know, they just keep saying, tell all the family how much we all think of them and how much we love them. And then they'd write something. Well, let me tell you, the laugh was a big part of all of this. His laugh was hearty. It was unmistakable. It was infectious. It was a laugh that lit up the room. And last of all, it was damn loud. There was no doubt. You know, some of you like snicker and everything, and it's all cool and polite. Scott's was out there for the world to hear and see. That is the truth. Some other traits that were shared with me was that he was larger than life, enormous. He steps into a room, he made a difference. He was a team player and a true leader. I never worked directly with Scott. I've been in the same areas of Scott, but his people were loyal to him. And you know what? For any of you that are in management or you run something, there is nothing greater than loyalty. People that will want to be with you, and you do that by creating the right environment. He did it. Andy, you talked about that. So did Brian. Where was I here? Oh, yeah. So anyway, so last night, here's another surprise. I went out to dinner here in town, and we went to a restaurant called Scott's. Larry and Andy, this ties in with something that you had mentioned about 2 or 3 weeks ago or so. You had mentioned, talked to Scott. Larry Michael was there, and he had mentioned that he had talked to Scott about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Glenn was there, and Glenn mentioned, yeah, Scott called me too. He gave me a call, said he's coming to Las Vegas and needed Guns N' Roses tickets. So he was planning. I looked at 2 of them and I said, he called me about 2 to 3 weeks ago. His concern or thought was, how's that retirement for you, Raymer? And I told him, it's a tough transition. For those of you that will take that step someday, You just don't like step into it. It's different. You know, we're tagged with these things on our sides, and it's not near the issue anymore. That. So anyway, so the thing is, I then asked him, "How's his family?" And for the next 5 minutes of the conversation, it was all about Lena and Isabella. He loved you both so much. Isabella, he bragged on you and the young lady that you become. And you heard the pride in how he shared what you were doing and how happy he was with your development. It was fabulous. I'd like to end my comments with a poem. At last his gallant soul took flight into the land where there is no night. But his name is carved in our hearts to stay as we think of the things he used to say. We've heard a lot of that. So he is not dead. He's only gone on into a brighter, more wonderful dawn. For men like Scott were not born to die, but like the sun that shines in the sky, he warms the earth and the hearts of all. And in happy remembrance, he lives again. So while he sleeps and his voice is still, his spirit goes on, and it always will. Rest in peace, brother.
Sisters and brothers are the truest, purest forms of love, family, and friendship. Knowing when to hold you and when to challenge you, but always being part of you. Carol Ann Albright Eastman. I would like to invite Shannon, Scott's sister, up to share a few words.
Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to our family. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shannon Opria, or as Scott would always call me, Sells. I'm Scott's sister and only sibling. I'm sorry. I'm up here today to share a little bit about my brother's childhood. We had a very happy childhood growing up in Southern California. We played hard every day and wouldn't come home until the street lights came on. Scott taught me how to play cowboys and Indians, army men, and delighted in teaching me all about matchbox cars. My Barbies were always friendly with his G.I. Joes. It's true. It's true. We watched John Wayne movies and couldn't wait for the yearly showing of Wizard of Oz. Our favorite Saturday nights consisted of Scott babysitting me while Mom and Dad went out because it meant that we could eat chicken pot pies and as much ice cream as we wanted. He was the best babysitter. We would sit on the family room floor and mash up our ice cream until it was runny and sing dark and runny, which made us laugh for hours for some stupid reason. Scott taught me how to play penny poker and Chinese checkers, and somehow he always won. I don't know if he was really teaching me the right rules, but anything I was scared over, which seemed to be everything, he was there to protect me. Whether it was the boogeyman in the middle of the night, and trust me, I slept many a nights on the floor right next to his bed, or Dad's scary Halloween costumes, he was always there for me. One of my favorite Save Shannon from Being Scared stories is our days going to Glendale Presbyterian Church. So I didn't understand why this man was bleeding from around his neck or his head and why he was nailed to a cross. And I came out of Sunday school terrified. Scott to the rescue. He had a plan for the following Sunday. Now, some of you may be offended by this, but remember, we were just kids. After being dropped off for Sunday school the next Sunday, Scott said, "Come on, Sells," and led me down to the basement of the church, where we waited until we heard the bells ring and we knew class had begun. And we ran down this long hallway and out the back door and took our offering money and went to 7-Eleven. And we bought candy. And church was no longer scary. It was super fun. We spent summers in Missouri at our grandparents' house helping my pa in the garden or waiting for the fireflies to come out at night. We didn't have videos or cell phones to keep us entertained. We didn't need them. In 1975, when our parents bought their vacation home in Kauai, we spent many summers over there collecting puka shells on the beach. That was a thing, you know. We all wanted puka necklaces then. Scott would spend hours in the ocean spearfishing, and it was always exciting to sit on the beach waiting to see what treasures he would bring out of the water. We spent holidays and other vacations with our two closest family friends, the Sumners and the Schwans. By the way, are all here and means the world to us. During these vacations, Scott was always our leader. When us kids would venture out, he would dream up games to play and mischief to get into, which would keep us entertained for hours. I'm sure you may hear some of these stories later. When we became teenagers, we were living in San Diego, and we often went to the beach in his red Toyota pickup truck. And I would sit in the back, and it had an open bed. He always assured me it would be safe. He would open his cab window so I could hear our favorite band, Cheap Trick, playing, and we would sing the whole way down Del Dios Highway. And he thought it was funny if he swerved and I got tossed around in an open bed truck. You know, safe stuff like that. I lived. Scott saved me many times from making bad teenage decisions. Thank you, Scott. In high school, we would have the best parties when my parents would go out of town. Everyone knew the Sells kids for their great parties. Scott typically would play the bouncer role, and for some reason he was really good at it. Scott got me through all my hard classes in high school, making history fun. When I was in college, Scott would road trip up to see me. He liked to do this reconnaissance thing around my sorority house at night to make sure I was okay while I was pledging. Whatever. Always my protector. Scott, you had all the special talents. You could sing. You were artistic. You were smart. And you were a leader. You were fun, and I always wanted to be where you were when we were kids. You are my big brother. You were my best childhood friend. You were my secret keeper. You were my protector. Your laugh is my laugh. My troubles were your troubles. My memories were your memories. As I always said to you as children, you were the wind beneath my wings. I'll be seeing you on the white sandy beaches of Kauai and over the rainbow. I love you, Scott. Thank you.
Scott's greatest accomplishment, and one he was most proud of, was the birth of his daughter, Isabella. He had photos of her all over his office and some of Isabella's artwork hanging above his desk. I'll never forget the day that he found out Isabella was a member of Mensa. He came to work telling us all about it. He was so excited. We saw him outside by his truck with a blue Mensa sticker, putting it on. He was just so proud. Not only does Isabella have a high IQ, but she also blossomed into a hardcore water polo player. He could have not been more proud. I'd like to now ask Isabella to speak about her dad.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Isabella, Scott's daughter, and some of you might have already heard a lot about me from how much I've been told he brags. Thank you for coming today. It means a lot to me that my dad had so many people who cared about him, and I'm sure it means a lot to him too. He was an exceptional leader, friend, and dad, and he was a great guy with a big personality and, not to be redundant, but an unforgettable laugh that lights up a room. Whenever he brought me to one of his functions, I would always just follow the sound of his infectious laughter to find where he was. He was such a kind soul, and I know he's helped many of you to better yourselves in one way or another. An effectual leader has to be willing to sacrifice, to be selfless, and must always put the needs of others first. As Nelson Mandela said, it is better to lead from behind and to put others in front, especially when you celebrate victory when nice things occur. You take the front line when there's danger. Then people will appreciate your leadership. No man will make a great leader who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit for doing it. He always strived to put his people first and to do what was better for the team. He was so special, and he's truly the best dad I could have asked for. Although many of you knew how successful he was corporately, you wouldn't have known how successful he was as a father, as I do. He always smiled at me and believed in me, and I could see how proud he was in his eyes. I'll never forget my childhood memories with him, even if they're little details like letting me punch and play fight with him, or preventing me from choking on M&Ms when we got into a competition, even though it was only a competition from my point of view. I remember how joyful the atmosphere would be around holidays, and on Christmas he always said that the best gift he received was the smile on my face after I opened all my presents. When he showed up to every water polo game I had, I could tell he was so supportive of me, and I know he was so proud of me. And he loved me with all his heart, and I love him too. I could also see what a great friend he was. I would always see him connecting with people and making even strangers laugh. And with his close friends, I could see how their bond was as strong as the blood bonds of a family. He was loyal to his family, his friends, and his team. And he was a fantastic leader, and he's always been a role model of mine. It was like magic seeing how he worked with his people at SCI, and I hope that I can carry his leadership and confidence with me throughout my life. He may not be with us physically anymore, but I hope that he can live on through each and every one of us, in our hearts and our memories, as the legend he is. Thank you.
Ahua Ma'ua Ki Aloha translates to, may our love last forever. During Scott's career in the state of Hawaii, he met the love of his life, his best friend, his wife, Lena. No man succeeds without a good woman behind him. I would like to now introduce Lena.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott's lovely Lena. You guys probably have heard about it. On behalf of Scott, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today to celebrate Scott's life. To some of you, Scott was a loyal SCI man, a significant ICFA figure, a former president. To many of you, he was a good friend. And to most of you, he was a great leader. To me, he was a rock to lean on and my best friend. To his daughter Isabella, his biggest pride, as you all know. He was the coolest dad a kid could ever have. During my mourning, my daughter Isabella told me not to be sad because matters are not created nor destroyed in the universe according to the law of conservation. All matters, yes. This is my daughter. Yeah, she comforted me. She was the adult. She made all the 911 calls, contacted all the people when I couldn't. Thank you, Isabella. Your dad will be very proud of you for the rest of your life. So, all matters simply change their forms and are recycled. Well, of course, as you can imagine, I needed to get some serious molecular biology lesson from my own daughter to fully understand the meaning of that. Last Sunday, we all lost a great man, one in a million, a rare gem. But the law of the universe tells us that he's still with us. His large mass will soon turn into air you breathe, ocean you swim in, and a tree you hug. You used to have to call, email, and text him to get connected with him, but now you just simply have to ask and remember what he taught us all by living in integrity over dishonesty, loyalty over disloyalty, leadership over division, and taking care of each other over hurting each other. Because life is too short not to. Many of you might wonder, why Scott? I wondered the same thing at the viewing yesterday. It was a very emotional moment for the family. Last night, he showed up in my dream and told me, "Baby, I was supposed to go because I wasn't happy with the amount of family I could heal." I gave him my very last letter, and he told me that you are supposed to write to me through your journey, your hard journey in your first year. And my dad, Rich, had to publish that book so that I can serve the families all over the world and heal millions of people who are in the worst pain in their life, a loss of the loved one. So let's live his legacy, or let's rumble, as Scott would say. Please take care of each other fiercely, as if today is the last day of your life. And take care of yourself. Thank you.
Hela meka pu'olo. Always take an offering with you. Make every person, place, or condition better than you left it. On behalf of his family, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time from their lives to come and celebrate Scott's. I would also like to send our love and support to his extended Hawaiian family. While they were not able to make the trip to the mainland, they have been watching the service live at Scotty's favorite place in Hawaii. At the conclusion of the service, we'd like to invite you to enjoy a traditional luau. But first, please stand together and join us in singing of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, accompanied on the ukulele by Mike Prekrivka.
You guys ready? of, oh, hold on a second, Scotty. Did you blow this? I think Scotty just blew the paper here. Where was I? Okay. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, oh, dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why can't well, I see trees of green and red roses too. I'll watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, well, I see skies of blue, and I see clouds of white, and the brightness of day. I like the dark, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. All right, let's bring it home. Ready?
Yeah.
Well, I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you'll find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why can't oh, That's for you, Scotty. We got through it. Good job.
Ladies and gentlemen, going to have the honor guard. Thank you.